Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 1286B, and today's date is May 22nd, 2017, and the title of the episode is, The Central Bankers Make Their Move to Control All Currencies. Let's get into the economic collapse, political and geopolitical news. Now, as we can see, the battle between Trump and the deep state, it is being fought out in the open. Actually, there is a coup against us. It's a coordinated campaign. It's brazen, it's bold. It's insulting to our intelligence. Actually, they're not even trying to hide their lies anymore. And truth, well, that's completely irrelevant. Now, to buy in on the media narrative, on the latest Russian nonsense, you must believe the following. Now, just think about this for a second. That whatever was revealed was super secret, though we don't know exactly what it was. That random anonymous sources in an intelligence community that hates Trump with a burning passion must be believed without question, though we don't know their identities or their motives. That when the Washington Post and the rest of the media publishes classified stuff, including intelligence provided by allies, leaked by anyone not named Donald Trump, well, it's completely awesome. That the Washington Post and the rest of the media, which has been wrong over and over again in the reporting, are not wrong again. This is what they want us to believe. And if you notice, they haven't shown evidence ever. They just keep going on and on and on about it. And that's the way propaganda works. Spread it around on a lot of corporate media sites. Make it look like it's coming from different areas. Actually, if it's within the same corporate media like CNN, pretend you have two different sources that are confirming the same exact thing, but never reveal the sources. And make it seem like that then is the truth. And make sure it shows up then on every other corporate media, and keep repeating it and repeating it and repeating it until everyone believes. That's exactly what they're doing right now. Why? Because they realize that they need to stay in control of what is happening right now. And they can't figure out any way else of doing this, because their whole goal is either have Trump join in with the deep state, or he needs to be removed. And of course, they're not just going to come out and say, hey, we're removing you. That'd be ridiculous. But they have to figure out a way to prove their case, to make people doubt everything. And this is what they've been doing. This is why they wanted a special prosecutor, investigator. This is why they keep saying it's Russian collusion. This is why they keep harping on Flynn to make the connection to Trump, and they're going to continually do this until the very end, until they can't do it anymore. And then they take it to the next level. And the next level is either forcing him to resign one way or another, putting a lot of pressure on him, or assassinating him. And it looks like they're prepared to do this because Pence, well, again, he's preparing a war chest for elections, which is kind of odd at this point in time. But we'll have to watch this entire situation and see how this plays out. Now, the Seth Rich plot, well, this is getting weirder and weirder as time goes on. Now, we know that this wasn't just a robbery, because they shot him in the back and they didn't take anything. Now, Seth Rich, he was the WikiLeaks source for leaks which proved that the DNC was intentionally undermining the campaign of Bernie Sanders. Julian Assange has already said, yes, that's where we were getting our information. Now, this is a problem because if this is absolutely true, and the emails did come from Seth Rich, well, what happens to the whole Russian hacking thing? That narrative is flushed down the toilet. And the deep state realizes this. And this is why you don't see it in the mainstream media. This is why they're not reporting on this, because this is not going to help their situation. Actually, their whole entire narrative of Russia collusion, Russian hacking, it completely falls apart. Now, to make things even more weird, more strange, Kim.com came out and said, yes, I confirm via Twitter that he was working with Seth Rich to get leaked emails to WikiLeaks. And he promised more information will be released on the interaction with Seth Rich. Now, the question is, why didn't he come out about this a lot earlier? Why did he wait until now? Maybe he waited for the story to break. Maybe he waited for information to come out. We don't know, and we'll have to wait to see what he has. Now, protesters were protesting out in front of Ajit Pai's office because Ajit Pai, he has a proposal to reverse Obama, his net neutrality rules. And protesters who had their faces covered held signs that read, "Ban Drudge, ban Breitbart, we want net neutrality," which is kind of weird in itself. But we need to understand what this net neutrality is. They're making it seem like we want a free and open internet, but the way they did this and the way they classified it with the FCC, Obama was trying to make it a utility where they would have full control over it. And Judicial Watch, they made 2 requests under the Freedom of Information Act, one on March 30th, one on April 4th, where they wanted all the emails between Obama, the FCC commissioner, employees, and the rest of the group, because they found something very interesting that really didn't make any sense. Because the FCC, they previously decided not to classify broadband internet as a telecom service. And then on February 2015, well, things changed. An Obama appointee controlled agency redefined broadband internet as falling under the 1930s public utility telephone statutes so that it could impose its restrictive net neutrality regulatory rules on the internet. And this is what Judicial Watch is going after, to see what Obama did to reverse this situation. And they're trying to investigate this because something doesn't make sense. And we need to remember that the Soros group, they were behind the push for net neutrality. And remember, from all these groups, from Obama and the rest, we need to remember they don't want a free and open internet. That's not what they were trying to do. They're trying to control it. And of course, every time they put up a title like net neutrality, it is always the opposite. Think of the Patriot Act. Think of the Affordable Care Act. Think of the USA Freedom Act. All these things that they've put out there with these type of titles, it's always the opposite. Now, we know when Obama was president, Duterte, well, he did not like Obama whatsoever. He called him a lot of names, and he said that he'd be pulling Philippines business away from the U.S., moving it towards China and Russia. And we see that the Philippine president, Duterte, well, he is in Russia this week for a 4-day official visit. And basically, they'll be signing a lot of bilateral agreements, including the areas of defense and securities. And basically, Russia is going to be supplying small arms, light weapons, airplanes, helicopters, submarines. And it looks like the Philippines and Russia, they're coming closer together. The Philippines and China, they're moving closer together. And we can see this is going to be a problem for the deep state. Remember, their plan was to encircle China, and that is falling apart right now. Because with the freedom of navigation in the South China Sea, that is coming to an end. We see the ASEAN and the nations all around China, they formed an agreement where they'll all be using the South China Sea, and all that gigantic push to make it seem like China was trying to control the area and stop other ships from sailing into this area, that is completely falling apart right now. And China has always said, listen, we would like to talk to all these nations, but the United States, they controlled all the nations and they kept them silent. And things are now changing. We see that North Korea, well, they're still firing their missiles, which they're not going to stop doing. They're going to continually do this. They're trying to create a self-defense mechanism just in case the deep state wants to have regime change in North Korea. And, you really can't blame them. Remember when they came out with the movie where it showed they were having regime change in North Korea? They blamed North Korea on the hacking of Sony when it really was a disgruntled employee. And we see right now they've been trying to provoke North Korea for a very long time. And I'm not really surprised that North Korea is creating these type of weapons to defend itself. And the UN, of course, stepped in now, and the United Nations on Monday called on North Korea to stop test firing ballistic missiles. And we see that North Korea right now is saying that they're open to dialogue with the United States. Trump is saying, yes, we would be interested. The South Korean president now is saying that, yes, we are interested. And I think it's just a matter of time before they all get together. And North Korea says, listen, if we stop firing missiles, will you stop the hostile, provocative actions against our country? And they might say, yes, let's put a temporary truce where we both won't do any of this for the next couple of weeks, and let's have talks. We'll have to see how that plays out, but I think we are heading in that direction. Tulsi Gabbard is out there, and she is the congresswoman who went out to Syria to find out what was really going on there, and found out that, yes, that the Islamic State, they have been torturing people, that the neocons have been supporting and supplying weapons to them, and the corporate media, if they were really unbiased and they weren't the mouthpiece of the deep state, they should have been all over the stories. Congress should have been investigating this, and they should have been shocked that this was going on. But you can see that nothing really happened. Well, she's out there once again saying that this deal that Trump made is absolutely disgusting. We should not be selling arms to Saudi Arabia because they commit horrific acts. They have a human rights problem. And she wrote a letter to Secretary Mattis urging an end to the United States military participation in Yemen's war, which I believe this should happen. And I do agree that since the Saudi government, and they're using paid mercenaries to go into Yemen, Yemen never attacked Saudi Arabia. They've been making the people pay there. This is part of the deep state because the people there decided to get rid of the puppet government. They threw them out. And now they want the people to suffer and pay and say, bring the puppet government back. But this has not been happening. Hopefully, Trump and Mattis say, you know something? Let's take a closer look at what's going on there. And maybe we should not be in Yemen. And we'll have to wait to see how that turns out. Because I do believe that Trump at this point in time, from all his actions and what he's been doing and what he's been maneuvering behind the scenes, that he is working in this direction. Now, Russia and Turkey, they signed joint agreements removing trade restrictions. And we can see that their trade is back on track. Mattis is out there saying that the escalation on the Islamic State, well, it's going to escalate and accelerate, and we're going to annihilate them. And we can see that in Syria right now, there are no militants in the Al-Ware area. They are completely gone from that area. They are withdrawing from the Al-Yarmouk camp near Damascus. They made an agreement with the Syrian government. And I want to bring us back in time to Obama for a second to show everyone what Trump's plan is. Trump has given the Pentagon, and I'm talking about those individuals that are going to actually fight the Islamic State, the ability to go ahead and fight the Islamic State and remove them. They're making a deal right now with Russia to work together to get rid of terrorism. Going back in time when the Islamic State first came out and the United States said, okay, we're going to be going into Syria, and I'm talking about the deep state, and we're going to help the situation in Syria and go after the terrorists. Now, everyone believed and everyone knew at that point in time that the corporate media was lying, that this wasn't the terrorists, this was the intelligence agencies, this was the deep state. They were using these paid mercenary soldiers to go into Syria and get rid of Assad. And we knew that all the bombing was just going to help the Islamic State gain more and more territory in Syria. How did we know this? Well, for one, Obama, he decided that he was going to be in control of what targets were going to be hit in Syria. Obama he exerted a high degree of personal control, going so far as to require that the military obtain presidential sign-off for strikes in Syria, because he was working directly with the deep state and they were telling him where the military had to bomb. Now, soldiers, they're going to take their orders. They're going to do what the president says, and this is what they were doing. And eventually what happened is there were certain individuals, whistleblowers in CENTCOM, who came out and said, okay, we've been falsifying reports saying that, we've been hitting the Islamic State here, we've been destroying this, and actually, this is not true. And yes, a report came out that U.S. Central Command, they've been involved in a year-long effort to obscure the fact that America's strategy to combat the Islamic State simply was not effective. That was a nice way of saying that we were not actually going after the Islamic State. Now, Trump is not picking these targets. He has those people who are working to get rid of the Islamic State, get rid of them. He's actually working with the Russians to get rid of these paid mercenary soldiers, to cleanse the area. And again, this is a slow process. This is not something that you can just do, because think about if all of a sudden Trump came out and said, listen, I know what the deep state's up to. I'm going to stop what's happening in Syria. I'm going to stop what's happening in North Korea. And I'm going to call you all out on it. Well, he did this with fake news, where he continually called the corporate media fake news, very fake news. And of course, the corporate media fought back, and people actually made fun of him, and it was all over the corporate media making fun of it. Yes, we knew it was fake news, but there were a lot of people out there saying that he's crazy. And if he did try to do this, the deep state, they would have created a major event right off the bat. He knew this. Mattis knew this. Many others knew this, that they would have created this incredible event that would have brought us into war. They would have collapsed the economy at that point in time. They would have kept him so busy with riots, with what was going on around the world, he would have no time for anything. So he's using a different strategy. And there is an old saying that keep your friends close and your enemies closer. What does this really mean? Why would you keep an enemy closer than a friend? Well, generally speaking, knowledge. The closer an enemy is to you, the more intimately you will come to know their capabilities. You'll know their strengths, their weaknesses, their tendencies. You can use this knowledge to your advantage. A close enemy is also one you're privy to the whereabouts of, so you're much less likely to be caught off guard. And if we listen to what Sun Tzu said with The Art of War, for if you know your enemy and know yourself, he wrote, you need not fear the result of 100 battles. But, Sun Tzu warned, if you know yourself but not the enemy, for every victory gained, you will also suffer a defeat. So, when we look at what Trump is doing right now, he's learning, he's understanding his enemy. In the beginning, when he came into office, he didn't understand. He thought he could work with the deep state. He thought, wow, all I have to do is create these executive orders and maybe I can bargain with them and everything will turn out fine. And he realized that it will not work this way. And now everything has changed. And now he's doing a lot of the things behind the scenes, and we can see there is a battle that is being waged in front of us. And we understand that this is going to continue throughout the rest of this year until the entire system crashes. Now, something very interesting. The central bankers, the deep state, remember, they need the US dollar because that is their funding, that is their control of other countries. And what we're seeing after this WannaCry ransomware, we see that US Congresswoman Kathleen Rice, well, she introduced a bill, and the bill is tasking Homeland Security in conducting a threat assessment for terrorists using virtual currencies like Bitcoin. Very interesting. Now, the Homeland Security Assessment of Terrorist Use of Virtual Currency Act was passed on May 18th. So this was already ready to go, and the WannaCry happened right during the same period of time. And if this bill is passed into law, well, the assessment will be completed within 100 days of the act passing. And then the results would be shared with state and local law enforcement agencies. And we need to understand that the central bankers, the deep state, they need the dollar because it allows them to control other countries. It allows them to control the wealth. It allows them to have covert operations. And by having other currencies like Bitcoin or other money, like Bitcoin, like gold, like silver, well, they would lose control. They see that Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies, well, they are now making a move. And if this grows and grows and grows and becomes more popular, this is going to be a problem for them because it's going to be very difficult for them to control because it's decentralized. And they don't want this to get any bigger. And we can see right now that looking at the terrorists right now, especially if you look at the Islamic State, they weren't using cryptocurrency. They were using the funds from the oil that they were stealing from Syria being moved into Turkey, and they were getting dollars for it. So they weren't using cryptocurrency. So when we look at this WannaCry malware that was pushed out, again, there were two agendas. One, to show, look how quickly we can bring systems down. Two, we're getting rid of the currency, Bitcoin. We're going after it. Any other cryptocurrency. Just like they manipulate gold and silver, and they make everyone believe that it's not money, they're going to be doing the same thing with Bitcoin. They're going to make it look like that it is used by the terrorists. But if you really look, the $100 bill is a bill that is counterfeited quite a bit. It is used for a lot of drug trade. It is used by terrorists when they were selling oil. And we can see that it took them years and years to change the $100 bill. So if they're that concerned, why did they wait so long with the $100 bill to change it? Because this has nothing to do with finding terrorists, because we know where the terrorists are. It's coming from the intelligence agencies. It's coming from the central bank. It's coming from the deep state. What they're doing is they're trying to stop other currencies from making their way out into the system, becoming bigger and larger and bigger, because this would then rival the dollar. And if other current countries started to use this, this would be a huge problem for them. And this is why they're going after the cryptocurrencies right now, just like we thought they were going to. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.